So, as these folks gather in Maricopa County and drum out Republicans who've been elected to office, who are being told regularly that the election that they were elected in was completely fraudulent and thrown by China and Germans and Venezuelan dead ghosts of Venezuelan hackers.
Yeah, and aren't just like regular citizens asking to be appointed to the a bunch of different roles inside of Arizona government?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, they overtook a school board there and then just voted themselves in and then voted out critical race theory, which wasn't being taught. It was just like regular diversity training, like anti-bullying stuff, which is not. Look, you might have issues with critical race theory. It's more like a college level theory on whether or not race exists, and if it does, should it be the primary definer of a human being? And it argues yes, which is creepy. But that's not what diversity training is. That's not what anti-bullying stuff in school is. Those are wholly different things. And as a matter of fact, critical race theory, in a lot of ways, is diametrically opposed to diversity and inclusion in those ways, which is the ironic part of it. And I think that's why they're trying to fuse it together, because they're trying to dirty up the diversity and inclusion and non-bullying stuff with the critical race theory, like in the same way that you go like, roads are Marxist, right? They have nothing to do with Marxism, but people are, wary of Marxism. So if you can tag Marxism to any social program or situation that's just general democratic taxation, thank you very much. If you can tie it to Marxism, there's half of the people will go, oh, good Lord, that sounds terrible. Yeah. I am no longer pro-road, right? So when they have nothing to do with anything. All right, so over the I guess last month, I guess, while Matt Gaetz has been running scared during this this increasingly bad news cycle for him, his buddy Joel Greenberg is basically turning on him and turning into other people, and they think that they're going to be able to talk this stuff away, that it's going to be his word against mine. And that's Matt Gaetz' argument, right? That he said this and I said I wasn't there, and they said I was there, I say I wasn't there, and that'll be that. And we'll just argue it out, and politics will save me. Trump style, politics will save me. Well, I have bad news for Matt Gaetz. There is a reason why Donald Trump doesn't use email, does not use Venmo, and does not in any form or fashion show his taxes to anybody or his payments, his monetary, like his bank accounts to anyone without a court order first. Yep. Like nothing is voluntary, and anytime they ask for it, you fight it tooth and nail all the time for the exact same reasons that Matt Gaetz is in trouble. But he's just eliminated it. Now Matt Gaetz grew up in a different generation, where you Instagrammed your crimes and you used all the technological things available to you. Now I could just swipe right and commit a state felony, right? And in this case, that is exactly what is happening. Now, some of you may recall that during the interview that Matt Gaetz gave with Tucker Carlson in his immediate, run on Tucker and clean yourself up, which is apparently the methodology right now. You just race to Tucker's show and he will let you, bask, wash himself with your show, right? And at one point in it, he brings up that you'll recall, Tucker, that I had dinner with you and your wife and a girlfriend of mine, and now they're trying to get her to turn state's evidence, and you'll recall it. Okay. And then we find out later that apparently that wasn't Tucker's wife.
What?
And she was out at their regular house, and he was staying in town at the apartment that the network, I guess, gets him, so that you have those two places. So you can live and work, like you have a house in Connecticut or whatever that is.
And
you work in Manhattan.
You're gross enough to cheat on your partner.
Yeah.
You also have friends who are chill with you cheating on your partner, so you go out and have effing dinner with them with your side piece?
Well, yeah, when it's Matt Gaetz, Like, he's literally going to bring someone worse. Whoops, we lost Johnny Million. Skype has been acting very weird on his end. I will dial him back, and you guys, unfortunately, will probably hear the Skype song playing in the background while I bring him back in. The curious part for me of the entire and we'll bring the Skype music in. Boom, bing, boom. Oh, it's a lovely song. I like it. Is he there? I think he's going to come back. I really do. I feel like Johnny's going to come back with us. I think he's going to be here. And as he restarts, can you hear me? We can hear you, Johnny. So
yeah, I can hear you.
good.
What happened?
I don't know. It just kind of blanked out. It just freaked out. So
yeah, you froze and you looked like this.
Well, that's how I look a lot. Hold on one second. Let me bring you back on screen because you were being hidden. So
what you just got done saying was like, if you're friends with Matt Gaetz, you're like, he's not going to mind. He's a piece of trash.
He'll cover for me. I mean, that's literally the operating. You know, it's like this bros before hoes attitude that they clearly have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're familiar with the vernacular phrase in that, and that is totally a dude who has said that to Joel Greenberg. Like, one of them has said that phrase to the other at some point.
Unironically.
Yes, I would bet the farm on it. So,
did Murphy come in again?
Huh? Did what? Sorry.
You looked at the door like Murphy was coming in.
No. The door is just creepy open. I was actually just looking at the chat in terms of this, but also that so he brings up this woman that he had dinner with Tucker and an as yet unnamed other woman, and Matt Gaetz says, well, we had dinner, and you'll recall, and now they're trying to get her to turn on me for some sort of pay-for-play scheme, which was an unforced error on his part, bringing up a scandal that had nothing to do with what was on there. I feel like we have to take a break in about a minute, but can we just readdress, looking back at the current state of affairs and how bad this is going to go for Matt Gaetz and how rough it went this week. The two nuggets he dropped on the Tucker Carlson show that have turned out to be a nightmare, like are amazing that you would even, you're already in trouble. Why would you bring this up? And then on top of that,
who is going to go to bat for this guy?
Oh, MTG, man. They're touring the country. They're misunderstood. They're only being, hey, Johnny, you don't understand. The big tech and big media and big Democrat and big voter and big government and big FBI are going after these people, not because they're criminals, not because they're un-American, not because they're undermining and destroying the trust that they have with their constituents. No, they're doing it because they love Donald Trump, and they're being attacked by Orange Man Bad. That's why.
Orange Man Bad.
Can you see it? We'll be back right after this. So, folks, let's go back in the Wayback Machine to the first day that the Matt Gaetz story broke, and he made a beeline straight over to Tucker Carlson's show to do this cleanup. And in that interview, he said a couple of things that seemed, at the time especially, not a lot of people jumped right at it. But I, myself, while I was live streaming it, and we were, many people who watch the stream know this at twitch.tv/AlSparks. Don't forget to subscribe if you have Amazon Prime. You can do it, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Thank you. That while we were watching this, he brings up, on the one hand, that there was this bribery scheme, right? Remember that, Johnny? He was being
extorted.
He was being extorted.
Blackmailed.
That's right. By a guy who was going to do him a political favor in exchange for money that his dad would loan the guy, who his dad would then get the money back. I have never seen a blackmail or bribery loan scheme where
talk of a person being wired for a federal agent discussed publicly.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that they write it out, and it, like, usually at the very least, if you do get a note, it's cut out of People magazine articles, and it gives the people back at Quantico something to do as they like look up see if there's any saliva in the glue behind it. Like, oh, I licked it absentmindedly, like a stamp. So he brings up this, and that whole scheme, that whole story is just beautiful garbage. It's just wonderfully ridiculous. We covered it a couple of weeks ago on the show when we broke down the basis of that entire idea. But basically, he was being offered a help by someone in exchange for temporary money, for his dad loans money. Like, we'll help your son get out of this very real trouble if you give us money to do this other thing. And the political ramifications of him helping us, we'll make sure that he's on the plane when we fly this guy back from Iran who's been a hostage there, and that'll get him so much positive publicity.
I forgot about this. And wasn't the guy like long dead?
Yeah, he's been dead for 2 years. But they still believe he's alive, and they want $25 million. You have to pay this guy, and then this guy, and then these people, and then this group of rebels.
It's going to cost a lot just to bring him back to life.
Yeah, and then the resuscitation.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to go to Bill Gates' house and get one of the med beds that he uses alien technology for, that is clearly, run on adrenochrome. I don't know. The whole plot seems very strange. But so in this, and that story really stuck out to me. But the other one was, of course, this dinner where Matt Gaetz says you'll recall that they're going after an ex-girlfriend of mine. We had dinner together, me and you and your wife, who wasn't your wife, but we'll pretend. And they're going after her in regard to this pay-for-play scheme, which had nothing to do, like, none of us knew about that part of it at all. Like, that wasn't part of this. The discussion was simply about this dude, Joel Greenberg, making fake IDs, driving girls or flying them across state lines or to the Bahamas.
Now, I remember when I was a crappy kid and I was in trouble for something, I would fess up for something for a lesser charge.
Yes.
I would say, well, I did do this.
Right. I did break the vase. But at least I peed in it first. I did not pee on the floor. I was peeing in the vase, and it slipped because my aim is bad. Dad, listen, back up. Hold on. Let me get out the whiteboard. This is going to take some work. All right. So in this, he brings up this weird side story, which is in and of itself, under normal circumstances, the reason why a state representative from Florida or some other state would get dumped from office by itself without the other having sex with a minor, child sex trafficking, plying underage girls because with drugs and alcohol. Because remember, one of the primary stories in this is that Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg and a couple of their other buddies invited girls they knew to be under 21 to a hotel room, gave them alcohol and drugs, and then tried to get them to have sex with them. And when the girls weren't interested, they went into Joel and Matt supposedly went to this room with this girl who was previously 17, now 18, whom they had sex with before, and were going to have sex with her again together. This is part of the story that Joel Greenberg is supposedly telling, and that showed up in some of the texts that they were talking about. That's awful enough. Even if Matt Gaetz skates on the idea, well, like, no, I didn't have sex with that girl till she was technically 18. I looked it up, even though his buddy was making fake IDs. It's just creepy. But he also was present. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor is one thing, but you can also get in equal amounts of trouble for giving alcohol to a 19-year-old. And that's and beyond the illicit drugs aspect of it, right? So there's a lot to unpack in this that is right within that thing, right? There's plenty of Tucker to go around if you're just talking about all the creepy stuff that's in there, right? Then he throws this weird thing that apropos of nothing into the conversation, and it perked up my ears, and a lot of other people were like, "You what now?" And what really ran away with the storyline, though, was that probably wasn't Tucker's wife. That ended up eating the news cycle about this whole thing. Well, turns out The woman he was referring to is a Capitol Hill staffer, and
we know.
Yes,
we know who this is.
Yes, we do. We do now. But she is currently right now, according to sources. This is from I think a WAPO article, or CNN is reporting this. The woman, a former Capitol Hill staffer, is seen as a critical witness as she has been linked to Gaetz as far back as the summer of 2017, a period of time that has emerged as a key window of scrutiny for investigators. She can also help investigators understand the relevance of hundreds of transactions that have obtained records of, including those involving alleged payments for sex, the sources said. News of the woman's willingness to talk, which has not been previously reported, except by Matt Gaetz. Am I the only CNN? Am I the only one that noticed that Matt Gaetz is the first person to mention this woman possibly cooperating in a pay-for-play scheme with knowledge of this other stuff was Matt Gaetz. All right, so, which was not believed, comes just days after the Justice Department formally entered a plea agreement with Joel Greenberg, a one-time close friend of Gaetz. Citation needed. I still think they're like this, and that's Matt. Needed. Whose entanglement with young women first drew the congressman into investigators' radars. There are new signs of investigative activity, too, after sources had recently told CNN the FBI was mostly done gathering evidence. Mostly done. One person... Oh, look who knows so much. He's only mostly done. One person familiar with the matter said that federal investigators have sought information from new witnesses as recently as this month, including communications and payments from a group of men that included Gaetz and Greenberg. A group of men. Gross. Sent my boyfriend a link to the Matt Gaetz news, and he said, I hope his ex-girlfriend is being interviewed by the feds in the presence of her legal guardian, and I fainted. This is amazing, right? And so what is Matt Gaetz doing? Matt Gaetz is taking a page out of the Trump playbook. If there is any part of Trumpism that survives his presidency, and it won't be policy, it won't be...
it'll be crisis denial.
Right. And using PR as your first wave of attack. That get out in front of as many... We are in such... And by the way, for the record, I blame branding. I think the movement towards branding from the marketing level to the personal level through Instagram and social media over time, where the aspects of your personality that you can monetize are the only ones that matter. And therefore, the goal is not to go, well, this is my professional life and this is my personal life, but to make all parts of your life professional in that regard. And so everybody is always selling every aspect of themselves to an ever growing niche of people, because there are enough people in the world that if you just market to lunatics, you'll never skip a dessert the rest of your life. And that's what Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene are effectively showing this. It's what the Maricopa County and the Antrim and the Fulton County stuff and Philadelphia and all these things that the right wing chasing this around, that's what that's showing us, is that you can narrowcast to an increasingly fervent group of lunatics who, to them, the elections are like Comic-Con. They're just LARPing this idea of a character, this patriot character that's not patriotic at all. It's just they wear the garb. They don't actually fight crime. They just wear the crime fighter outfit and try to make you think, well, you look good, Gary. That kind of thing. So, you know who I'm talking about.
I can see them trying to hype each other up.
Dude, you look great. You
look good. No,
you look good.
Get outside your head. No.
Yeah. No. It kind of reminds me. The third Spider-Man all right. Okay. Not the movie. The third one.
I know the camo doesn't work so well on the courthouse steps.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. Dude, what a great idea. Your camo looks like steps. I went home and I painted these like stripes across my outfit and put a slight gradient on it so I can stand there You know, I cover myself in mud and lay in a ditch like Rambo with a buck knife. So this is we got to take a break. But the other side of this dynamic duo right now, beside Matt Gaetz, who is obviously touring the country to gain, to protect himself from the reality of the stuff he's going to be facing, which he absolutely will, with this by trying to grind himself into this crowd, like just fall into this crowd of zombies, so that if you go anywhere near him, you'll get bit. Which is why he's going to Maricopa County. Is why he's following these folks. He's using them as
their crazy, like a layer of crazy protection.
That's right. He's using them as human shields. That's what he's doing with all this stuff. Marjorie Taylor Greene, same stuff, but it's a softer relevance issue. We'll talk about that when we come back, because she's now leading what's effectively the anti-vaxxer crowd. She is if anti-vaxxers have an official representative in the Congress, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll be back right after this. Having been in Tallahassee, and Johnny, have you ever been to Tallahassee? You've been to Florida.
I don't think I have.
You've been to Florida, right?
I have.
Yes, you've been to, let me guess, Orlando, Miami.
Orlando and Tampa.
Okay, there you go. Orlando and Tampa. That was my other guess. Right. Pretty normal. There is no... there is nothing even close to a similarity between Tallahassee and Tampa. They are from wholly different universes. And the reality is everything you think about Florida and what you picture in your head about Florida, South Beach, Disney World, Key West, beaches, giant herds of sharks during the summer of 1983, going up and down the coast eating swimmers, all that stuff, that's not what it's like in Tallahassee. Tallahassee is in the part of Florida that I call lovingly, and many other people do, I suppose, too, Floribama, which is, it might as well be southern Georgia or Alabama. It's basically the same kind of territory. It's the same kind of folks. It's much more similar to those areas than it is to the rest of the state. And that's where the capital is, and that's where, the DeSantises and the Gaetzes of the world live. This is their primary, and that's their view of it. They view the real Florida is Floribama. The rest of that stuff is tourists and Cubans and Hispanic people that they'd rather not hang with, right? And that's why you look at who runs the place, considering the number of like the culture down there and the number of old people down there, and you always seem to end up with some dude who looks like he runs a used car dealership in the middle of Tennessee, right? Or or in the case of what's his name, Scott, of him, he just looks like a mortician or something. I'm quite sure. So, anyways, there you go. In this, it makes a lot more sense as a college town, as the town where all the governmental business is done, that it is sort of divorced from the rest of the state in a lot of ways, in their attitude, and it's easy to lock onto the laissez-faire kind of aspect of beach life and stuff, that there might be a seat of Trump voters or right-wingers down there, but it's been a swing state for a long time because it's a very get-along to go-along state in most cases, except up in those areas where, like I said, it has a lot more in common with Alabama and the like. And you have a lot more of these bro types like him there. And then you've got, so it's not surprising that he's got, well, he's dressing up in these kind of like Ivy League suits, that make it look like he's a Yale student, because that's how he dresses normally. No socks, loafers,
I don't like his look at all, man.
Tapered pants, giant head. Right. He looks like a male Bratz doll, but it's why he went to Wyoming and thought he could fit in. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about. All right. I'm not wrong. So, in this,
I just didn't expect a Bratz reference at that moment. It got me.
Good. All right. Well, that's the goal. So, let's not forget that Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, are going to this, fight the fraud, stop the steal audit thing in Maricopa County with Paul Gosar, who is right now, I would say, the single creepiest member of Congress, and that's saying a
Paul
lot.
Gosar?
Paul Gosar.
That's a high bar, dude.
Yeah. Watch him speak in any committee hearing. There's a lot of creepiness going on. I'm not even like
I'm
Ted
afraid to
Cruz is
Google.
creepy, but relatively harmless. You know what I mean? Like I don't know anyone who is afraid of Ted Cruz, right? And not this, and the same thing of Matt Gaetz. You know what I mean? Fighting. Like if you got into a situation where it just seems like it's like being overpowered by a lollipop, I suppose, in those moments. I don't know that it would worry you, but Gosar looks like one of the characters in Manhunter who was, that they were interviewing about a series of murders. He's a very, like, it's just his mannerisms, his way he speaks, and his obviously white supremacist leanings. I mean, he's not only going to this thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, he's also going to this other neo-Christic gathering that's happening at the same time in town. Like this,
Neo-Christic.
yeah, it's like Christian maggots gathering at a church.
I see.
It's like, yeah. So he's one of those. It's Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, and there we lost you again. And then I don't know what's going on. We got to figure out. We're gonna have to bring him in via Zoom or something. We'll figure it out. It's reloading, and you guys will have to hear. Let's see. Am I getting close? Yeah, I got 2 minutes. I'll bring him back in. I don't mind hearing that song. It's a good time. But Paul Gosar, on a personal note, that's how he strikes me. Everybody dance. And that didn't work. All right. So it might be happening on his end. We'll figure it out during the break. Yep, it went away. There we go. It's the damn Russians again. They're attacking it. I will fix that during the break. I might bring him in via Zoom or some other source. There's always options. We can always make it happen. But they are. Let's see. I wanted to find the flyer for this thing is another thing, like, where essentially these folks are just going there for publicity with a certain crowd that they think will be necessary to the next round of elections. That's really what this is about. That by going to this is CPAC is dead. Long live CPAC. That's what this is. They're going to these gatherings because this is effectively the real CPAC. This, and which is stunning. That it happened so quickly that CPAC's influence waned, but what came in to replace it were these pseudo-Christian, right-wing, anti-vax, stop the steal, crowd gatherings that effectively are replacing the Trump rallies. And he's going to be back out there allegedly. I don't think they'll last long. But we'll tell you why when we come back from the break. I'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Will Johnny be back? Absolutely. I'm going to fix it. I was just making the case to the lovely folks in the chat room about how Matt Gaetz has effectively has gone full Bob Roberts. And if you haven't seen the movie Bob Roberts, it will be eerie as you watch Matt Gaetz effectively mixed with Trump is effectively what's going on there. And they are, according to this is from the Arizona Central, vowing to stand against a democratic agenda they repeatedly cast as socialism, which ain't, by the way. Even people who are positive on socialism don't get the definition right. I was so tired of having to defend this point that I literally went back and reread 2 books on socialist theory to see if I was misunderstanding some of it, and I'm not. Oh, there's Johnny. He's going to be coming in there. I'm going to admit him. And there's double me on the screen right now, and here he comes. There he is. Yay! It's Johnny Million. This is a hurrah. I was just saying, Johnny Million, that I was, let's see, I'll figure this part of it out. Oh, that's what I wanted to do. I have to pin you. I hope you enjoy it. There you are. That's right. Now you are officially pinned. So over the course of fixed, bam, done. Over the course of the last couple weeks, I've been rereading books on socialism to see if I was off in my description of said phrase when it's used, by people positively and negatively. Because I see tons of stuff about the concept of socialism on the left all the time, because the socialism as a path to communism, which was the Stalin-esque methodology, and in many ways, if I might flex a little, an example of the fear base that you see around anything that sounds like a social program leading to socialism, which leads to communism, is based on Fabian socialism, which is named after I think he was a Caesar or a warlord who they called Fabian the Delayer, and he was known for not beating people in battle but just wearing them down. He was a siege general essentially, and that was and so when you hear the creeping socialism concept, it's because of this fear of Fabian socialists, integrating themselves into the world and trying to creep us towards socialism. That's their big fear. Now, I would argue that on the right, there is sort of the Trump crowd qualifies as effectively Fabian monarchists. Monarchism? Yeah, Fabian monarchism. Yeah, right. Just call it that. I'm making up the word. But the idea being is that they creeping monarchy. The idea that what America really needs is a leadership class and a leader in particular that rules like a dictator, because you can't trust people to make their own decisions, and democracy itself is a problem. And you hear a ton of that. And oh yeah, I think Chicago and everybody needs to hear you, because I've got to add you to the call thing. That was my mistake on the audio part of it. That's an easy fix. I can do that. I can make that happen. But in the course of, looking at how, they are in Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar, who's from Arizona, which shouldn't surprise anybody. Because I think most of us would say that, Paul Gosar strikes me as most likely to have heat stroke as far as the Republicans go. Of all the people, who are in Congress, he's the guy who looks like he fell asleep on a rock in the middle of the desert and woke up loopy. And so let's call it what it is: Fabian fascism. I would. There's a good argument for that, except they believe in. I would have believed it was Fabian fascism that they were creeping into if it wasn't so cult-like in its service of Donald Trump. Up until now, you could argue that there was a Fabian fascism going on in the Republican, being so kind of pro-military, pro-war, pro-policing, the Patriot Act kind of stuff would be that creep towards it. But it was always around. It didn't matter who was in charge as long as they were a Republican, right? This is the idea that they're all for one and one for all in this own version of it. The difference under Trump is that there's absolutely a monarchical twist to this, where he represents to them a sort of Ubermensch character that they will follow to the gates of hell. Speaking of gates of hell, Matt Gaetz and Marge Greene are at this, America First rally. Now, these America First parts of it is, there's a lot of stories have been told about the sort of backstory of the America First thing, that Dr. Seuss drew against it, that it was linked with the Nazi Party, that it was, it was actually a thing that was sort of isolationist to keep us out of World War II longer so that the Nazis could get further along. So you go, this is America First. We don't need to go save Jews in Europe or stop them, invading Poland or France. Let's take care of America first. In our modern parlance, it's been attributed to things like Iraq and Afghanistan, where we had, for whatever national security issues we had there, could have been handled with Interpol and in a coalition of countries dealing with what is effectively a worldwide criminal element, not an actual National Socialist movement in Germany trying to take over an entire other country and invading like that. It's much more subtle. It's much more in line with, it's linked with the drug trade. It's linked with, money laundering and all these other things that are different inherently than obviously Nazism marching into Poland, right? And so when you apply America First to why are we in Iraq, it's a lot more appealing than it was, in theory when it was first applied to why are we saving Jews in Germany, which is what it was about. So, and they don't, it's not like they don't know this. Absolutely, Matt Gaetz and them know this. Their love for the Jewish people extends only to the strategic value of Israel in the Middle East. That's it. Everywhere else, you're on your own. And just like every other person that isn't part of the clique, I suppose. But this, they know this. They know this America First moniker rings, especially in the older voters of that time, where a lot of those older voters think we missed the boat by not just letting it play out in Europe. You could have wiped out the Zionist scourge, all that stuff. We wouldn't have created Israel in the first place, which would have made the Middle East easier to exploit for oil. That there's a bunch of that crowd in the Republican Party still alive today, right? Still operating it. And this young crowd is appealing to that crowd and also, delivering their own modern version of it. But so where I would say is it's Fabian fascism might have been true during the Bush years. This is clearly a monarchy at this point. That Trump, even in his exile in Mar-a-Lago, as a bulbous, syphilitic, mentally deranged leader making all the wrong decisions, like the Robert the Bruce character in Braveheart, where he's just increasingly turning on his friends and saying, well, you have to sacrifice some of these people because they won't understand. That Trump is increasingly taking on that role. And because he's sort of gross and boring and the excitement of seeing him has waned quite a bit, there's some people trying to move in and take that mantle. And Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene are the early crop of that. They're not the best of it, but they're the first wave, right?
They're pretty gross.
Yes, they are gross, but they're not as effective, and they don't have the baseline, and they didn't wait long enough to let their troubles sneak through into the press. They jumped out right away. Now, there's in the maggot and Trumpster world, there's a very strong chance that Matt Gaetz gets in trouble, pleads down on something, gets a Jeffrey Epstein kind of a early Florida sentence where he gets a key to the jail and can come and go on weekends for 2 years, and then is seen as a Republican martyr, and where he can't practice law as a felon anymore, or he can't hold certain kinds of positions as a law enforcement officer. He can't be a Seminole tax collector, for example. He can certainly run for elected office as a felon. And there is every possibility that the Matt Gaetz of the world could run on a persecution ticket to, and find himself in league to be, in the vice presidential decision making by 2024, even if he goes to jail later this year. I'm not kidding. And they know this. But the only way that's possible is if they go on these big tours, if they get out in front of it, and if they have the cult of Trump backing them at every turn with promises of violence, because that's an integral part of this. So that is why he and Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Arizona. Because I would guess 1-to-1, while Marjorie Taylor Greene is all in on these folks, much like Paul Gosar is, that Matt Gaetz knows who he is using and why. And that's what makes him singularly different. I mean, literally at the beginning of his remarks when he came out, he went, "Thank you for having my back." That's what this is about. That's why he's there. That's a raison d'etre of the whole element of that. And they are, they're tag teaming. It's boring and terrible, but then so were Trump's rallies. It's just exciting to hear people parrot back to them what they want to hear. That Trump really still is president. That Biden's not, is an illegitimate leader. That, it was a
I'd like to talk to Trump about these gas prices, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's the funny part, is that like all the bad stuff apparently is Biden. All the good stuff is because Trump is really down there, and Linwood says that they have to call him for permission to do stuff, and that anything Biden signs doesn't go into law. It's adorable. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Parks Radio program, mega worldwide now on now zooming Johnny Million, because that's what we
do. Zoom.
I was going with I want to zoom. Yeah, we'll be back right after this. Zoom.